What is the answer to those types of people?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that you can do, part of the reason that health insurance in Illinois is more expensive for the ordinary family than it is in other states, going back to your question about competition and so forth, is states impose different levels of mandates on health insurance providers. So, for example, Illinois is a high mandate state. One of the things, for example, is health insurance plans that are offered in Illinois have to cover alcoholism, right? And so, let's say I'm a Mormon and I don't drink, but I still have to buy a health care plan that has alcoholism coverage. Well, that has no relevance to me, but it still increases the cost of the health insurance that I pay. And you see this, again, these are examples that you see replete throughout the system that otherwise artificially increase the cost and decrease the accessibility of quality health insurance for families that may not otherwise, that would otherwise be able to pay for them.
So states mandate that, so that's things you can control. And
that's
so,
things we can control, right.
So you can make a more menu system of insurance? Is that what you're saying?
Right, yeah, I mean, it should be more of a kind of a Chinese menu where you tailor a health insurance plan to your specific healthcare needs. I mean, that's makes more sense. You know, we're not all the same. We don't all have the same challenges and needs in terms of healthcare services. So in the marketplace in which we should be able to tailor plans that are responsive to our particular family's needs and not to some kind of generic template.
Okay, well, let me shift the conversation to energy dependence or independence, because Illinois is a very rich resource state. We have coal, we have nuclear, we have wind, we have biodiesel, soybean, we have ethanol, corn. We actually have some oil reserves and natural gas in the state. I didn't even know until recently. I read an article, we have oil reserves as well. We have a lot of natural resources. But if since the regular voter doesn't sense that we're actually utilizing all of our natural resources that this state has, how can we as a state of Illinois decrease our dependency on foreign oil? How can we take advantage of all these rich resources the state of Illinois has?
Well, I think you're starting to see some of that. I mean, certainly we have more nuclear reactors than any other state in the nation. So
20 years old and older, though, most of them.
No, I understand. I understand. But I mean, I think we need to continue to make that commitment to nuclear power because it's a clean, safe energy source, and it just throws off the kind of wattage that. If we're being real honest, things like wind power, solar power, I mean, these are minuscule compared to what nuclear provides.
So how do we do that from a state? I mean, the federal mandates so much.
Right.
I mean, they pretty much stop a lot of the development. How do we as a state take control of our own energy?
Well, I mean, I think nuclear is its own case study.
Right.
I think what you're seeing, though, one example of where the state can be an actor in improving the utilization of the resources that we have, as you described, is coal, right? So we have this future gen plan in Mattoon. Right. And I think people have complained about that as some kind of as a federal boondoggle worth $2 billion worth of federal stimulus funds to finance the operation of that plan. I actually think that's an area that's a smart investment. And the way I look at that is not something that is going to be self-sustaining in the short term, but the way I look at it is that's an R&D project to develop clean coal technology that then can be utilized to harvest Southern Illinois coal and Southern Illinois and to some extent coal, I should say. And Southern Illinois and to some extent Central Illinois have huge coal reserves that we should be leveraging as an energy source for the state of Illinois.
So, this will go to my next question, because there is a lot of issues on cap and trade and other things that would seem to be negative towards energy development in the state of Illinois, especially with coal. I want to get specifically into carbon dioxide because for some reason that's the focus of a lot of the government mandates. And even if we have clean coal in terms of taking the sulfur dioxide out of the coal, thus no acid rain, no pollution, no asthma issues, we still have the CO2 issue. So what are your thoughts on climate control and some of the things that they're doing right now with cap and trade and CO2?
Well, cap and trade is an idiotic idea. Cap and trade would destroy this state's economy and a lot of other states. It's irresponsible. It would send our manufacturing sector, across the nation, to China and India tomorrow. So it is it's one of the worst pieces of legislation I've seen in some time, maybe second only to the health care bill at the federal level. So I'm adamantly opposed to those types of things. And frankly, as we have seen in the last couple of months, much of the climate change science is highly suspect. And I don't believe we should be making overarching policies based on suspect science. I think we should look at what we know to be true and then have a response that's proportional to the threat level. And the threat level of climate change, as it has been promulgated by the Chicken Littles of the world like Al Gore, I just don't buy. So I don't see this as a existential threat, and I certainly wouldn't want to get the government in the business of managing this any more so than I want the government managing our economy generally.
So to be clear, and I don't want to put words in your mouth,
Yeah.
but you see a distinction between sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, being one being a
Yes.
pollutant that we can
Yes.
clean, and one not being an issue. Is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing?
I mean, well, carbon dioxide, we're going to have a problem. Human beings produce carbon dioxide, so, I don't know what those mandates are going to look like if we want to eliminate carbon dioxide, but yeah, I mean, I think it really it's a lot of hysterics. And I think it's being proven out by some of the climatologists and science who are kind of coming forward saying they told us to cook the books.
Well, that was actually a question on the list here that I wanted to talk about and get your reaction to it. In August of this year, or I should say, I'm sorry, 2009, because we're in 2010 now, Professors Linzen and Choi from MIT released a scientific paper that essentially measured over the last 20-some years the amount of heat dissipated off our atmosphere into space. And all the climate models from the UN all say that the heat's going to rise because they will actually release less heat over time into space. Well, the last 20-some years of this study showed the opposite, actually. The more heat that was generated in the atmosphere, the more proportionally that was going out into space, and vice versa. So it caused a lot of ripple effects amongst the scientific community, and a lot of people saying what they need to look at it again and all that, because it is kind of a blow to the current I guess, status quo in the science community. And the other one is this East Anglia issue that came up, where the place in England that measures a lot of this stuff and created a lot of these models actually had emails that got onto the web that showed that they were kind of cooking the data a little bit, even just a little bit, and it concerns a lot of people. So I wanted to get your feeling on this, and the reason this comes up so hot button in Illinois again, we are very rich in natural resources, and a lot of voters out there are concerned about the inability to use those natural resources for the future, and wanted to get your thoughts on some of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. You look at what we know and then calibrate the response. So what we know is that over the last 100 years, the median temperature of the Earth has increased by approximately 1 degree Fahrenheit. Now, okay, so what is the policy response to that, or does it even demand one? Do we understand what the basis for that is, and what kind of threat does that pose? I mean, it was just 30 years ago that they were predicting the next ice age, and now Al Gore and other folks are predicting, the end of the polar ice caps and floods and conflagrations the world over. And I'm always suspect of people who are predicting the end. And so I just look at it and say, well, let's see, it's a 1 degree increase Fahrenheit. Maybe that has something to do with that ball of fire in the middle of our solar system. Maybe it has something to do with, we've got like a tinfoil wrapper on the Earth's core, which is about 6,000 degrees of molten lava. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe there's a component that it does have to do with man-made concerns, and that's something that we can address, but address it in a reasonable way. You don't address it in a way that says we're going to destroy Western civilization, that we need to take on the combustion engine as the great threat to our survival. And I just think that that these folks are out there pitching snake oil for their own financial benefit, and I just think it's a big hoax, and that any type of public policy needs to be calibrated to a proper threat assessment and an understanding of the basis from which this threat was created.
Okay, well, let's go from one threat to another threat here. Let's talk about Thompson. It's probably going to be a done deal. I mean, it's kind of a rubber stamp. I mean, anything could always happen, of course, but it sounds like they're closing Gitmo down and moving to Thompson. I've even heard some people call it Gitmo North now. Right. So that's a wonderful term for Illinois. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on Thompson? Do you oppose doing this? Are you for doing this? What are some of your thoughts on Thompson?
It's a horrible idea. It makes no sense. The Auditor General of Illinois, this guy named Bill Holland, he writes these great reports that nobody reads except me, apparently. But 60 days ago, he wrote a report assessing our Department of Corrections infrastructure. And what he found was that our existing 28 state prisons are 32% over capacity today. So if you want to bring Thompson online and get a return